Hey, welcome to the rant for November 16th. Pushing through this winter of misery and this year of misery. Might as well start out with some good news. The Steelers, 9-0. I can put on this Steelers wear with a lot of pride this year. I was wearing it in past years, but now it's feeling better and better. Sorry about those Ratbirds this weekend, guys. And yeah, Dean, still my condolences for Dallas. Either way, Super Bowl bound. Mark that here now. Now, on to last week's show. That I have my weekly show. I go on, I rant, I get stuff off my chest, I bitch about the news. I do those things. I make jokes. For those who haven't seen it before, for those who have, you know what to expect out of this. Last week I had some people pissing and moaning about my rant, which I enjoy. I love the crabby feedback. I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to make me happy. So as long as you're watching, I don't care whether you're happy or not. But one was a guy going on about how I was hurting the cause because I had ranted about some of the actions of Peter Downing and his little group with their idiocy with this Alberta First End game with their Confederate flag and Maple Leafs in it and such. And yeah, I'm hurting the cause, really. Really, this is the way Western independence is going to come about, is by putting out ridiculous graphics like that have nothing to do with Western Canada and just alienate people. But I'm hurting the cause. Yeah, whatever. The other thing got people wound up, because I did say I am supportive of vaccines, so yes, the anti-vax conspiracy theorists, and I'm sure there's some listening tonight, got upset with me. Well, too goddamn bad. I'm not worried about polio or smallpox or a number of things because of vaccines. They do work. They were a fantastic invention in human history, and I am going to be supportive of them. Now, you know, I have concerns about ones that are being rapidly developed, and I'm not sure if I want to be the first one to be getting one when the time comes, perhaps if one ever does come out for COVID. But as it is right now, there's vaccines that are coming up. They're looking promising, and we need to do something about this goddamn pandemic. And if this proves out to be decent, I'm looking forward to getting mine and other rational people getting theirs too. It's not going to control your mind. It's not a UN conspiracy. It's going to stop you from getting the fucking thing so we can get our economy back in order. Those who have a problem with those statements, that's fine. You can suck my balls. That's the typical thing. It has been an ugly week for COVID. I mean, it's rising all over the place. In Alberta, of course, the usual suspects are just going postal on Twitter. Thankfully, Twitter is absolutely nothing like the real world. I mean, if it was, we would have had an Alberta Party government in Alberta for some years now, and the NDP certainly would have maintained their position of power within Alberta. But all the same, it's a loud, hysterical world that does influence the press. And they're just going nuts because COVID cases and deaths. And that is concerning. I'm concerned about this too now. Deaths are spiking following the case rises. I mean, they've been screaming about cases for months now and ignoring the fact that the deaths were virtually flatlined. The deaths are starting to creep up. We had 20 just recently in Alberta. That's a lot of people. Again, you got to remember there's 4.4 million survivors from this. Like, we've got to look at the whole friggin' province. It's a concerning number. Drill down into them, though. One of those was over 100 years old. Most of them were in their 80s and 90s. Again, I'm not saying we should just kill off the old. I'm not looking to kill your grandma. Spare me the tropes and the bullshit, guys. But thankfully, this disease predominantly kills the dying. That, at least, is one small blessing in it. If you're young, chances are it's not going to do much to you. But the thing is with the hysteria, you know, people say, lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Well, wait a minute, because we're not having much bloody good evidence that lockdowns are going to do anything for this thing either. We do know where the vulnerable are. We see that with these deaths. They're elderly. These are sickly people. These are people with pre-existing conditions. We need to work harder to isolate them. This stuff is getting into the senior centers. It's getting into the hospitals. That is a problem. That's a big problem. Let's focus on that. Locking up all the healthy people from we're looking in other jurisdictions doesn't do a damn thing anyways. But, you know, they're screaming. Why? Because we have a hysteric left opposition in Alberta that desperately wants to use this crisis to make Kenny look bad. That's the bottom line. Don't worry. There's lots of valid things to bitch about the UCP government with, and I will. But the COVID response, what, decimating our economy, and the deaths will carry on. I mean, we should look at all the other provinces because they keep acting like Alberta's the only province that's got this problem going on. No. In fact, everywhere in the developed world, these cases are spiking. This is happening everywhere, no matter what the degree of lockdown might be. What does this tell us? It tells us the lockdowns aren't doing a hell of a lot of good. I hate to say it, but if they aren't doing any good, then why would we want to do them? Because we do know that they do a lot of damage. again, it's not saying do nothing, but just to scream and dive in and shut down the economy when we're not really seeing much evidence. I mean, look at that. Doug Ford panicked and did cartwheels and freaked out and locked down Ontario's restaurants and things a month ago. Their cases are still going through the roof. Their deaths are still going up again. 29 out of a province as big as Ontario. It's tragic for those 29 people and their families, but this isn't the plague. This isn't the Spanish flu or anything even close to it. Quebec, again, same kinds of numbers. All these provinces have different policies. They have different levels of restrictions, lockdowns, and again, their trend lines, their deaths, really all seem to be just about the same. So let's not quit pretending as if the Alberta government's sitting on some sort of magic bullet and they just refuse to use it. It's not that simple. That there's no bloody magic bullet. That's the problem. The closest thing we can come to that will be, there's only 2 ways that this thing's going to end. 2. That's it. Either it's going to run its course, and those who are vulnerable to it are going to pass on, which is unfortunate and terrible. And the rest of us will gain herd immunity because it will have run through our ranks and we build the antibodies to it. Or a vaccine will come out, and we can skip the step of making it run the course of everybody. But you got to remember, a vaccine might be a long ways away. How much do we want to bankrupt ourselves waiting for it? Again, when it might not help. So think harder before screaming for lockdowns, guys, especially when they might not do any bloody good. I mean, even Nunavut's trying to lock down now. They did a hell of a lot up there in winter anyways. I spent time in the Arctic. Either way, they're shut down because it's spiking up there even. But we are seeing a lot of political games being played over this COVID, and some people really want to exaggerate it as much as possible, and there's few political opportunists worse than his worship, Naheed Nenshi. And he of course, he's getting Samson to do his bidding and basically talk roundabout, like saying he want a 1 month long lockdown in Alberta. And Nenshi was even saying things like, if I were premier, I would do this. Well, you know what? You're not. Thank fucking God. And you're not gonna be. What it is, though, is he's trying to position himself. He's down in the dumps in the polls. He desperately wants to keep his mayoral throne because there's not a lot of options ahead of him. He was talking to Trudeau the other week, so maybe he's trying to negotiate a cushy landing. I'd hate to say it, but very good chance we might be seeing Senator Nenshi one day. At least he can't do a lot of damage. He can just sit and bitch off of a new overpaid throne. But he's making the most of this pandemic. And the worse he feels he can make the provincial government look, the more he can try and say he's the hero who's trying to save Calgarians in light of the evil, Kenny. I was going to say mustache tweaking, but I don't think I've ever seen him with much further than scruff on his face. Either way, it's just kind of gross to watch this going on, but it's not terribly surprising. And let's get on to somebody who's taking the most frightening advantage of this circumstance to try and impose some very frightening changes. We saw some transparency out of Trudeau in a way that I wish I hadn't seen, because what he's talking about is outright terrifying. It's like the veneer slid off. But either way, I'll play the video clip and we'll go from there.
Building back better means getting support to the most vulnerable while maintaining our momentum on reaching the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs. Canada is here to listen and to help. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
Okay, so yes, there was a skip ahead in the middle of that thing. It wasn't photoshopped or edited. It wasn't to take him out of context. Come on, people. Those words were pretty clear. It's just that it was a long speech, and the two major parts are what need to be highlighted on what he was going on about. One of which was the 2030 United Nations Agenda on Sustainability and the reset, the term reset. It's a loaded term. Now, both of these things, they exist. They're out there. They've been out there. People have talked about them for quite some time, but they've been dismissed as conspiracy theorists. I was in the middle. It wasn't a conspiracy. It's right there on the UN site if you want to see it, this 2030 agenda, which would bankrupt us as a first world nation if we really pursued this to the maximum of what they want to do. And that's the goal. Tear down the rich to make everybody equally poor. That the equal distribution of poverty is the basis of socialism. And the UN is a socialist organization dominated by dictators. You can see that in the list of people they put on the Human Rights Council, for crying out loud. What a joke. I mean, even China's on there. China. So either way, there's that agenda. And then there's the Great Reset, which is a big thing that some, again, hardcore socialists have been proposing. And that thing's been around for a while. It's a theory that comes down to, the world is inherently flawed, and if we could just get a big enough crisis to tear everything down to its roots, we could build a socialist paradise out of the wreckage. And it's the big reset. New economic systems. The things that Pierre Jr. was just talking about there. He was being quite blunt about that. I mean, so to bring about and induce, if you really want to see this reset, and he says it's going to fix the climate and we're going to have new economic systems, read socialism. Look to Venezuela, see how well that paid off. Look at that country. Beautiful climate, could have had a giant tourism trade, some of the biggest oil resources in the world, some skilled people for a time, well placed for international trade. They're broke. They're literally eating their own fucking dogs, robbing zoos for food. That is what a great economic reset brings about. Trudeau, I was just shocked that he spoke directly about these things, maybe because most people just don't pay attention or care or understand. But I tell you what, it's chilling. The timing for him to take advantage of saying that, I mean, if he really is pushing for the Great Reset, then he will want to accelerate our economic collapse, because we really want to make the shit hit the fan before you can rebuild it. That's how a reset works. And boy, a lot of us are going to suffer along the way to this goal. Some others pointed out, come on, Justin's too damn stupid to come up with something that profound. You're probably right, but you got to remember the people standing behind him, whether it's butts or others, are beaking in his ear. And these are not stupid people. They're ideologues, and they are not well-meaning, but they're not stupid. Again, there are a lot of liberals who are quite still, business friendly and so on, which again astounded me that they'd stand by while Trudeau's putting this crap out. I guess when Trudeau's more reliant on, Jagmeet Singh's socialist support than anybody else is to keep himself on the Prime Minister's chair for now, he's not afraid of dipping so deeply into the waters of insanity of things like the 2030 UN agenda and the Great Reset. This is really disturbing stuff. People... I'm not reading too much into it. That language is brutal, and we are economically up shit creek badly enough as it sits today. Going into that stuff is going to send us into the dark ages. We're not going to crawl out. It's not going to be a reset. It's just going to shut us off. Either way, onto a mixed story here. So there was a remembrance broadcast. The world is all broadcast now. We don't get to meet each other, see each other, talk to each other. We broadcast everything. People are getting real slow on figuring out this whole Zoom uptake, though. If you're gonna do a Zoom things, like, you don't allow page sharing. We've seen this with council meetings and other things, and the big joke on it is always to put porn images up there. To be honest, if I was in high school and I could have done this, many years ago, Remembrance Day ceremonies were important, and it was important to let students know what happened and everything else. But they were also deathly boring often for us, and if I would have done something of the same. So either way, for you people running Zoom meetings and public meetings, please turn off the page sharing, or you're going to, and I think there was already a term for it, they're calling it porn bombing. You're going to have it happen to you. So get control of your meetings, guys. The world is different, and in an ugly way, but you're going to be the victim of a mixed, like I said. I kind of laugh at this, and I kind of feel bad because it's Remembrance Day, but pay attention. Getting on to the world of the stupid. It's a big world there. Quebec, yeah. They're stupid. Speaking of secession, I really wish they'd go. They would just do us all such a favor. So they're heading down towards banning gas-powered vehicles. California, San Francisco, I think it was, ban natural gas in new houses out there. They're having brownouts because they can't even generate enough fucking power right now as it is. And they're banning further sources, for cooking, water heating, and what little heat you need in San Francisco area. And now Quebec says they're going to ban gas-powered vehicles. This shift, this push, this myopic idiocy, you're trying to stop. The only way the world's going to shift, the only way it's going to change, is if you change the demand. Otherwise, you're just playing whack-a-mole for your ideological agenda. If you really want to see an end to gas-powered vehicles, you want to see an end to petrochemicals, we're going to make computers out of hemp, and cars are going to run on unicorn piss or something, fine, you can have that agenda. But until the consumers want the hemp computers and the unicorn piss cars, they're going to stick to the current tried and true. You got to change the demand. Trying to cut off the supply won't change it. All it will do is shoot out the cost for the people who are still demanding these vehicles. Any economist worth their salt is saying there's 10, 20, 30 more years of growing demand for oil in this world. It's going to grow. It's not going away. That might change in 40 years. That might be finally the curve. We might finally hit the peak oil that they've been falsely warning us is coming for the last 70 years. But until then, quit kicking ourselves in the balls. We need this. The vast majority of vehicles are gasoline. We don't have the infrastructure to go electric. Do you know what kind of upgrading it would take to change a city so that every house could charge its vehicles? Do you know what kind of mining and lithium is required to make the millions and millions of electric vehicles to do this? Do you know the kind of money, what it would do to your electric bill? This is the fun part I have, and it shows and I love quoting him over and over, and I'll quote him over in other shows as well. Hayek, my favorite economist, said if socialists understood economics, they wouldn't be socialists. That statement alone really does say what it's all about. Because you watch these green people online. Oh boy, it would just be so much cheaper if we went electric and everything too, and so much greener. Yeah, I don't need it. I take the bus. Look, even if you don't have a vehicle and you do take the bus, or even if you walk to work, that's fine. But do you understand what is going to happen if you increase the demand for electricity 1,000-fold? Because that's what will happen if we got rid of all the gas cars and it all went electric. And if we somehow dammed up enough rivers and made enough nuclear plants and did whatever the hell we had to, because wind and solar won't do it, not even close. They're a fart in the wind. They're nothing. So we did all that. We somehow managed to come up with enough electricity, but still, the cost then for having built all that and upgrading the infrastructure, even you who doesn't use a car, rides a bike to work or whatever, your electric bill's going through the roof. So if you want the lights on at night and your heat because you shut off natural gas, so you're going to have to get electric heat, you're going to pay a fortune. Welcome to supply and demand, peckerheads. We saw this in the past too, and some people learned that you can convert old cooking oil. It was funny to watch these hippies learn this lesson. I remember reading an article about that. They were going around and they had a system set up at home, and they could convert old cooking oil from restaurants into diesel, and they were burning it in a diesel engine of a vehicle. And they were going around getting free oil behind restaurants because normally restaurants are trying to dispose of that stuff. But it got popular. And eventually what happened? Well, the restaurant owner started saying, well, you know what, I'm going to charge you for that. I want some money for that. Well, he lost it all, you capitalist bastard. Well, now there's a demand. Welcome to reality. I owned a restaurant. I sold it 6 months ago. I had a service that would provide me the bin. They would collect all that restaurant grease off me and pay me 10 cents a liter on top of it. Whereas before, a restaurant used to have to pay to get rid of this stuff. But that's reality, guys. It wasn't a capitalist conspiracy. If you go out and start building a demand for it, the price is going to go up. So you know what you got to do? You got to build a demand for your hemp computers and your unicorn piss powered cars. Until then, it's not going away. All you're doing is hurting everybody by trying to force us into something that we can't do. Speaking of those kinds of idiots, yes, we have Gretchen Whitmer. She's the governor of Michigan. Hard left lunatic. She shut them down over there again. All sorts of issues with her. And she's got some big issues with the Enbridge gas pipelines that go across from Canada down and across and into Michigan. Never mind that they need it. Never mind that the price shocks that are going to come if that pipe actually gets shut down. And by the looks of it, it won't. Every time these clowns try to shut it down, it goes to the courts and they lose. But they just don't stop trying. Again, they just feel if we could just stop pipelines enough, people will all just stop driving gas cars. No, they won't. All you're going to do is hurt them. You're just going to make their cost of living go up. You're just going to put more people out of work. The pipe's been there longer than she's been alive. But it won't stop her. These ideologues. Now it's earned her the title. It's my first foreign one I think I've given out of it. Choad of the week. I guess she really is a chode. She is a sad sort of thing. I did a podcast interview of Jason Kenney, by the way, last week. It was popular. One of the things he did was he talked about those efforts to stop Alberta lines in Michigan as being brain dead and everything. And then here she went shortly afterwards and moved to stop these pipelines. I don't think she listens to my podcast. This was on the works already. But some people were already tweeting, oh, look at that, you and Kenny. You're just screwing Alberta by, what kind of diplomacy is this? God, I only wish my reach was that strong. Either way, Gretchen, you're the Choad of the week. I've had enough ranting for this week. I feel better now. I'll sleep well. I'd say I hope you do, but I don't really care. Wednesday, regular Western Standard news things are going on. Subscribe on the YouTube if you want to see more of this. There's not just ranting. We also do some straightforward interviews. Subscribe to the Western Standard itself online. You know, we always need a base. It's really growing as a Western publication out there. And Dave Naylor and Derek Fildebrand and some others get some fantastic news scoops and tips going on. Either way, I will see you again.